Stacey.
And I'm Lois.
And this is Whose Girl Are You? Today, I want to ask Lois about what's been going on in her life. There's been some significant things, but I just want to give you a warning right now. Grab your tissues. It's going to get a little bit heavy and a little bit sad, but it's also a lot of beauty. So, with that, we'll get started.
Yeah.
There's been some pretty significant events that have taken place. And I know it's hard to talk about, but
yeah,
I'd like to jump right in. Do you want to tell people what's been going on?
Yeah, I can do that. So, my husband just recently passed away. Whew, this is crazy.
It's hard to say. I know.
I know, it's super weird.
Very recently, though.
Yeah, very recently. We had give me a second.
Yeah, take as much time as you need. You know, while you're doing that, let me just say something. When the first time I ever went to Grief Share, one of the first things that Pat asked us to do the first time I had ever went, she said, we're just going to go around the room, we're going to say our name, and we're going to say the name of the person that we lost. Mm-hmm. So it got to mine. Ironically enough, it was my sister-in-law, Lois, not you, Lois, because you're sitting in front of me. I get to the point of me, and I had to say, hi, my name is Stacey, and I'm here because my sister-in-law, Lois, died. And the minute I said my sister-in-law, Lois, died, I had never said those words out loud. I'd internalized them, of course, and I knew what had happened, but I had never said that to somebody. And the minute I said that, I absolutely broke down. I could not get myself together, and I was so shocked at how verbalizing the reality that we've already faced.
Makes it realer.
Makes it more real, right? It's so strange. I don't understand it, but I think that there's, every time we speak their name and we say what happened out loud, there brings a measure of healing. So I know it's hard.
Yes. Yes.
And I really appreciate you trying to do this so soon.
Yeah.
So anyway, take a breath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 1 week ago today, we had his calling hours. And a week ago from tomorrow, we had his funeral. And I'll just start back a ways.
Yeah, if you don't mind, start from when the first time you had an idea that something might be wrong.
Yeah.
When was that?
So he had been having for a couple of months, he had been having abdominal pain, but he didn't think it was anything really significant. You know, he's like, I'm getting older. I have diverticulitis. I have maybe gallstones, like whatever.
When I was there in December, he told me he had pancreatitis.
I know.
And I said, how do you know? And he said, I have all the symptoms. I said, have you been to a doctor to diagnose? And he says, no, I have every single one of the symptoms. I know that's what I have. And I'm like, okay, because you know Al, you're not going to argue with him. He's made up his mind.
Exactly. So he had symptoms longer than.
Yes.
Than.
Who knows how long?
Who knows how long, right?
But what drove him to go to the doctor?
So he had lost some weight over the last few years. He had gone to the doctor several years ago, and he had high blood pressure, which is why he needed to go to the doctor. So he was getting, you have to go periodically to get your prescription renewed. Mm-hmm. And they did an A1C, and his blood sugar was high. So they wanted to, address that and put him on meds for that. And he's like, well, how about I just lose 40 pounds? Cause that's probably the problem, right? Right. So he did. He lost some weight, and intentionally. I mean, he started we'd go to Red Robin and he would have half a burger and half his fries and take the other half home and heat it up in the toaster oven the next day,
Right. Yeah.
And it was very intentional and it worked. He went to the doctor and his A1C was good. The doctor's like, whoa, you actually did what you said you were going to do. And he's like, of course I did.
Very few people do.
I know. And the doctor was like, wow, okay. So that was good. Well, he started losing weight really quickly. And
like a few months ago, or?
Yeah, a couple of months. I
know timelines
Yeah. It really escalated over the last maybe month
Okay.
before he went to the doctor. And I'd actually had a trip planned to go to the convention the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little bit like, do I go on this trip? Do I not? I know he's
Yeah,
not.
we actually talked about that.
Yeah.
Because you were like, do I, don't I, da, da, da. And of course, I'm just like, go on the trip.
I know, of course, right? And I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't go back and change that.
Yeah.
But it's what kind of brought it to a head, because I got home. I was gone for, I don't know, a week and a half or something. And I got home and I'm like, this weight loss is significant.
And had you stayed, do you think maybe you wouldn't have seen it?
I don't know.
Do you know how when you
Yes.
step away from something and you come back, and I'm sorry to interrupt here, but
Yeah.
I didn't notice my daughter was losing significant amount of weight when she got her diabetes, like when she was developing type 1 before her diagnosis, because I lived with her, and you're like, my kid's always been skinny. I didn't realize just how skinny she had gotten because I saw her every day, right? It didn't click with me. It was somebody that hadn't seen her in a while that came to visit that said,
yeah,
this is maybe needing to be checked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you go away for a week and you come back and you went, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was it. Exactly. And I'm not saying he lost that much weight over that week.
Sure.
But I looked at him and went, wait a minute.
Uh-huh.
And it took me a few days to get him to go to the doctor. Still, even after that, I was like, that's it. I'm done. We're going to the doctor. Like, please, will you go to the doctor with me? I'd been asking him for over the course of that few months before that. I would say, do you think you should go to the doctor, or why don't you go to the doctor, or let's go to the doctor, or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm fine. Whatever. It's getting better. Well, this was like, I am putting my foot down and we are going to the doctor because something is wrong. So we went to the doctor. Of course, it's a Saturday afternoon when I finally get him to agree to go, right?
Yeah, right.
So we went to an urgent care and they check his whatevers. And because he had abdominal pain, they did a scan, an ultrasound. And the ultrasound tech said something, which maybe they weren't supposed to do. But the ultrasound tech told us that there are masses in your liver. And really strangely, a few minutes later, he said, do you know Jesus?
The ultrasound tech said that?
Yes. And I said, actually, yes, we're both Christians and we believe in Jesus, who's the resurrection and the life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked him, do you ask all your patients that? And he said, no, I don't ask everyone, but I ask it pretty often. And I said, wow, well, thank you for doing that. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. And someone else actually referred to faith, or I don't remember what the other person said, but it was something about Christ or faith or being a believer or something to that effect. I don't remember it, but two people at that visit.
At that urgent care?
At that visit, two people.
I want to go to that urgent care.
I do too, right? I'm like, highly recommend.
Yeah. You should write a review on Yelp.
Yeah, no kidding. But I remember thinking, as soon as that text said masses in the liver, I remember thinking, God be glorified in this. Mm. Whatever this is, Lord, glorify your name. That doesn't sound good. Mm-hmm. But glorify your name. So they sent us home. They had done a blood draw and they were going to check his blood sugar. And they said, it's probably fine, whatever, just head home. If there's anything concerning, we'll call you. So we drove home and barely walked in the door and we got a phone call and they said, your blood sugar is really high. You need to go to the emergency room. You don't want to wait till Monday. Mm. And we're like, okay. So they said, which emergency room are you going to? We're going to send your scans there and your blood sugar results there. So we're like, okay, well, we'll be there in 45 minutes. That's about how long it takes to drive there. So we headed for the emergency room And we get down there, and when I told them we were checking in for blood sugar, they say, why are you here? And I said, urgent care sent us here. My husband's blood sugar is really high. And they're like, okay. So they get us, eventually we sat there for a while, whatever. They get us in, and they're like, this is kind of weird. Your blood sugar is high, but it's not like get yourself to the emergency room high. It's like go to your primary care doctor high.
Mm.
But then
what was the number even? Did they tell you?
I don't remember what the number was.
I'm a weirdo because I have a daughter with type 1, so I'm always just like, what was the number?
I know. I think it was in the, if I remember right, it was in the upper 300s.
Okay. Yeah. So not, high for sure, but not, I get it.
It was either upper 300s or lower 400s, maybe 420 or 380 or something.
If you don't register on a glucometer, which only reads up to 500.
Yeah, exactly.
If you ever test your blood sugar on a glucometer and it says error or something like that, it means you're over 500.
Yeah, exactly.
And you better get your butt to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
But 300 is like,
Yeah, I think it was right around 400, just below or just above 400.
Okay. So anyway, so they say, this is weird. Why are you here?
Yeah. Why are you here? Oh, wait a minute. This scan is why they sent you here. They want a CT scan because the urgent care had said you need a CT scan, but we can't do that until Monday. They didn't have.
And you don't want to wait till Monday.
And you don't want to wait till Monday. So we got down there and, you need a CT scan right now. And they have the ability to do that. So they did a CT scan and they said there are masses in your pancreas and in your liver. And you need an oncologist. So we went home. They gave him pain management, which was wonderful because he'd been in pain and managing it just with over-the-counter meds.
Is that, you think, one of the things that drove him to say, okay, I'll finally go, because his pain was getting worse and worse and worse, and the pain was like, okay, pain will drive anyone to do anything, right? So, so he finally goes in. Yeah. So they sent him home with pain management stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
But now at the ER, did they say, hey, now you need a biopsy so that we can figure out?
No, they just said you need to see an oncologist.
Okay,
they give
so you
us
just
a
need to see an oncologist.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go home. It's the weekend.
It's the weekend.
So you go to church on Sunday or no? This was Saturday. So
yeah.
You wake up the next morning. Did you go? Or is he in too much pain?
I'm trying to remember.
I know it gets blurry. It gets really blurry. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter if you can't remember.
I think we went to church on Sunday. He might have stayed home and I went with Cash. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he might have stayed home. But you
went home waiting for oncology to call you for an appointment.
Yes. And they said, if you don't hear from them Monday by noon or whatever, call them. So Monday, oncology calls me. The first thing she said was, we have this referral and they referred you to Dr. Blank. Don't remember the name. Mm-hmm. But they are not the best in this area of the body. Can I change your referral to Dr. Dong, who is pancreatic, abdominal, whatever, digestive tract, whatever. I don't even know what her specialty is, but it's in that area of the body. And I said, yeah, I don't care which oncologist. If you think there's a better oncologist than the one they gave us as a referral, then great. So they did. And Dr. Dong became his oncologist. But she also said, so she's a scheduler, right? She schedules the appointment. She changes the referral. And then she also says, you don't have a health insurance? I cannot put you on schedule until I get a waiver from the financial department. And I'm like, why can we not see the doctor and just swipe our credit card? We have a credit card with a high limit and there's lots of room on it. Can we just get this started? And she said, I'm not allowed to schedule you until you either have insurance or a waiver. She said, I'm going to work on the financial department to get the waiver. Please, be patient with me, but I'll get back to you real soon. So I'm like, okay,
That just goes to show you how expensive oncology is.
this is going to be. Yes.
Yeah.
And let me back up a little bit. I'm trying to decide how to tell this story because there's so many threads.
Mm-hmm.
We had in 2022 a builder who did not pay us for 2 very significant jobs. And so our tax return, all of our income, we paid our bills and we survived. Al sold some guns and things, but our 1040 was abysmal as far as our income. And I was so grumbling at this builder all of the rest of 2022 and 2023 when we were doing our taxes and whatever, because, I mean, it was just stupid, right? And 20 minutes after I get off the phone with the scheduler and she says, I can't schedule you until I get a waiver.
Mm-hmm.
The financial department calls me and they said, can I please run your numbers and try to have you apply for Medicaid?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we don't qualify for Medicaid. And she said, well, at least if we do this, the process, we'll know. There might be some help there, whatever. And I said, we pay our doctor bills. We always have. We've had significant financial medical bills in the past. And it might take a few years, but we pay them off. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And she said, Mrs. Madsen, you cannot pay this bill. You cannot pay this bill. And I'm like, well, and she said, please just let me run your numbers for Medicaid. And I said, okay. So I gave her my tax forms and her whatever she needed. And she calls me back like a half hour later and she said, Albert Madsen is 100% covered for Medicaid.
Because that builder didn't pay 2 significant jobs.
Yes.
You don't know. God goes before us and he hedges us in and you don't know, right?
Oh my word. Oh my word.
You're like, thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So not that crazy. What that person did is okay.
No, it's not okay.
Yeah.
But my grumbling about it in 2022 was,
you didn't know it was coming.
I didn't know. know. And I'm not saying, it's not right to grumble, but I was grumbling.
Yeah.
But she says, Al, me, and my son are all 100% covered for, and she said it's retroactive to July 1st.
Oh. Yeah.
And he had gone to the doctor on July 8th.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So she said, let's get you on schedule. Well, she sent me back to the scheduler, but she's like, you're covered. The scheduler will be calling you. Yeah. So they called me. That was Monday. They called me. We met with oncology on Tuesday, just a televisit. And she said, looking at his scans, his CT scan, his ultrasound, his symptoms, his whatever, she said, my educated guess is that you have pancreatic cancer that has metastasized to the liver and it's advanced and it is incurable and it is terminal. If I'm right. She said, I cannot give you a diagnosis or a prognosis without a biopsy and then get the results of the biopsy. She said, but looking at all of your symptoms and everything, I really think that that's what you have.
So the biopsy was to confirm her educated guess.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. She said, let's get you in for a biopsy. So that was on Tuesday. We met with her. It took until Monday, the following Monday, to get the biopsy. But we didn't want to wait to tell our kids until the results of the biopsy because it was.
She already had a strong feeling that
she had a strong feeling.
It was anyway.
Yeah, and we wanted to tell the kids, this is what we think it is because, I mean, that kind of news, we sat on it for a couple of days. We went on Saturday and we didn't say anything until Tuesday. to our kids. We waited a few days. I mean, when they told us masses in the pancreas, masses in the liver, and you need an oncologist, we're like, this is not good news.
No.
But we didn't say anything until we talked to the oncologist on Tuesday. So then Tuesday we told our kids that this is what she thinks it is. You know, we don't know until we get results of a biopsy, but this is her guess. And she knows what she's doing, you know? So.
And you had some kids local, but some kids away.
Right.
You had the kids in South Carolina get together before you told them, correct?
No, we didn't. We didn't have them get together because it was late in the evening already. So we have we have family dinner on Tuesday out here with our local kids. So everyone was together.
Okay. That's what I'm thinking of. Yep.
Yeah. So we were here. They were all together. The local kids were. And then once we told our local kids, then we did a conference. I texted all the kids and I said, we need a conference call.
So you did tell them at the same time. Yeah.
Well, we told the local kids and then we did a conference call with the South Carolina kids. So it was different groups.
Yeah. But I guess the one thing I was kind of looking at is that instead of calling each kid individually and having to go through the whole story over and over and over.
Right. No.
You did it at family dinner for out west, and then for the kids out east, you did, let's do a conference call and you can all hear at the same time. We can converse about that together or whatever. And I think that's really smart.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was really good. And one of our kids during that evening said, "Are you mad?" They asked Al, "Are you mad?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, are you angry at God? Like, if this is really what this is?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "No, why would I be mad? We're all going to die."
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it would be this soon, but we're all going to die. Like, why am I immune from getting cancer? People get cancer and die every day.
Yep.
And I'm nobody special that I'm exempt from that.
Mm-hmm.
And he told his brother when he talked to him, he said, "I guess God thinks my life on earth is over. I don't think it's over. I have a whole to-do list. I have projects I'm half done with, but apparently God thinks it's over." He was at peace with it right from the beginning. He never said, "Why me?" or "Why is this happening?" or "It's not fair," or "This isn't okay," or whatever. He just
never
did it. He accepted it from the minute he heard. So we did the biopsy the following Monday, week after the initial televisit. And then we waited until, she said, 7 to 10 days for biopsy results after the biopsy. And so we did the results of the biopsy the following Tuesday. So it was a week and a day. So it was, this time, I tell you what, that time between the televisit on Tuesday, the 11th, to the visit in person on Tuesday, the 25th, 2 full weeks, was about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
That waiting.
Why do you think the waiting's so hard?
Oh, I don't know. Because you can't do anything. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And we were moving forward with preparations already in our life, in the practical things of our life.
The running of finances and business and things like that.
Yes. With this is going to happen. This is what it is. So we were in preparation mode for that already. But the emotional, I don't know, that waiting is torturous.
I think that the waiting can be hard because our brains go down so many different paths, like, and it's exhausting. Like, what if this, what if that? I mean, let's consider this, let's consider that. And like, we don't really know. And like, what if he has 2 years, or what if it's really fast? Like, and you're just all over the place, and you're trying to run every possible scenario, like we're some computer system, and we can't run all of those. This is when it comes back to, like, you have to keep reining yourself back in and being like, I just trust that the Lord has us.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
And like, I need to rest in that and try to like do the next step. But our brain constantly is like, nope, we're going to do this. You're like, what about this? What about this? And it's just, I think that's the waiting. And when they finally tell you, here's the diagnosis, here's the prognosis, I think you can kind of sit back and say, okay, that's the end. That's what it is. Now I don't have to run all these other scenarios. I mean, still there's some there, right? Like, is there some crazy thing we can go to Mexico and have done? Or is there's always these, can we take this natural route? Or, there's still a little bit of it, but I don't think quite as much. You're a little bit more honed in. And so I think, yikes. Yeah, that I can't even imagine. I mean, I can't even, I mean, I remember taking a pregnancy test. I could hardly wait 30 seconds. Right?
Right.
So.
Right. Exactly.
2 weeks is a very long time for a life and death situation.
Yes, it was. It was very long. So we went in for biopsy results. This is 2 weeks and, like 3-4 days from the initial doctor's appointment. And we meet with the oncologist, and she says the biopsy results have confirmed my educated guess. You do have pancreatic cancer. It has metastasized to the liver. It is incurable. Without treatment, you have 2 to 3 months. With treatment, you have 6 months to 2 years. Now, all of that is dependent on how aggressive it is, how advanced it is, which she said it's very advanced, how your cancer responds to treatment. Sometimes with certain people, it responds and we can knock it back with chemotherapy. And the other piece of the puzzle is, how does your body tolerate the treatment?
Right.
Chemotherapy is a nasty bugger.
Yeah, it brings you to the brink of death.
Yes.
And then pulls you back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's trying to kill all the other stuff. It's not targeted enough.
Right. So she said, I want this to happen as soon as possible. I will send out the referrals and whatever, and you'll be getting phone calls for getting these things scheduled and whatever. So let me back up. When we met with the oncologist, and I believe it was on the televisit, the first visit with her, Al said, we have a trip to Minnesota planned for the middle of August, and we are going on that trip. That was the first thing he said. When even when they said masses in your liver, he's like,
by the way, I have a trip planned.
By the way, I'm going to Minnesota.
Yeah. It wasn't just a normal little we have a little trip to Minnesota planned.
No.
This had been 2 years in the making, right?
Yes. More than 2 years.
Yeah.
So more than 2 years ago, we had been talking. Our 40th anniversary was on August 13th this year. And a couple of years ago, we were talking about our upcoming 40th anniversary in a few years. And what do you do for it? People go to Hawaii, and people go on cruises, and people go to whatever, We're both of us were we don't need to go off by ourselves. We have alone time. Our youngest is 15 and he's got a social life. And if we want to go to dinner, we just go to dinner. If we want to go on a weekend, we go on a weekend. We just live our life, right?
Yeah.
And so both of us said, and Al was even more firm on it than I was. He said, I want to go somewhere with our kids and our grandkids. That's the fruit of our 40 years together.
For sure, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's do a trip, a family trip. So we had gone to this place in Minnesota. It's called Waldheim Resort. Highly recommend. There's cabins on a lake. Al had lived on this lake when they moved to Minnesota. On the other side of the lake, they had rented a house. Mm-hmm. So this lake is dear to their family. So we had gone there in 2007 for Al's parents' 50th anniversary with all of Al's brothers and sisters and all of their grandkids. So this is like sort of family tradition, you know?
Yeah.
But I told our kids when we talked about it and decided what we wanted to do, I told our kids, you know, our 40th anniversary is coming up in a couple years. Start putting money away right now. We want to do a family trip to Waldheim, just like we did with Grandma and Grandpa. But they did 50 years. We're going to do 40 years because nobody's guaranteed 50 years. And if we can do it again at 50, we'll do it again at 50.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing 40 instead.
Which, in retrospect, so smart.
Right? Right? So from the first words of the doctors and whoever saying, you know, you need treatment, whatever, he is like, I'm going to Minnesota. I'm going to Minnesota. Our goal is Waldheim. Like, that's it. That trip is happening.
So Waldheim, from when they kind of told him, like, this is what we think you have and all of that, Waldheim was how many weeks away?
It was about 2 weeks, a little over, maybe 2.5 from like the oncology visit, something like that.
Because he had a treatment before Waldheim.
Yes. Yes. So we had met with the oncologist and he tells her, I have this trip planned. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary in Minnesota in a couple of weeks. And she said, that is very important. You need to do that. Mm-hmm. And she said, this first treatment is going to make you feel a little better, hopefully a lot better, so you can enjoy that trip with your family. Because this does not change the diagnosis. We're going to treat this, but your prognosis is still incurable cancer. Mm-hmm. And that trip, we're going to make 3 weeks between your first 2 treatments so that you can enjoy that trip to Minnesota. So the following treatments will be 2 weeks apart instead of 3 weeks apart. Mm-hmm. So we get done with that appointment. She got us in the next day. They got us in for port placement. So a port is instead of doing an IV in your arm for chemotherapy, which goes in by IV, in case anybody doesn't know, it goes into your veins, you know, like a fluid drip or whatever. The small veins in your arm cannot handle chemotherapy because it's so strong and it will damage those veins. Mm-hmm. So they put a port in your chest, which goes into the larger veins, like your, oh boy, what's the huge vein in your throat?
That's your vagus nerve. No, I feel like I'm being quizzed on biology. I should know this because you have like your big arterial veins.
Yeah.
Your carotid artery.
Carotid artery.
Is that it?
Maybe.
Carotid, I think so. is in the neck. Yeah. Okay. I think it's the carotid.
Okay. Anyways, it's one of those large veins that goes basically straight to your heart.
Yeah.
It's a bigger vein. They can't put chemotherapy in smaller veins.
Yeah, we have our aortic, our carotid. Yeah. Man, it's coming back. I took biology.
I did too. But right now, I got nothing. Yeah. Anyway, so they put a permanent port under your skin, in your chest, which then they can just access. It's basically like a small IV tube that goes right into your vein. And then it has an access point, and then the skin just grows right. They just like put it right under your skin. So they just go straight into your skin and in your chest, and it goes right into that tube. And that goes to it's in a larger vein. So anyways, he had port placement on the day after oncology. And while we're waiting in the waiting room to get his port placed, the scheduler calls to start scheduling his chemotherapy. And they called, they said, does he have his port yet? And I'm like, well, we're in the waiting room. He's going in 5 minutes. And he said, I can't schedule it until his port is actually placed in case there's any
problems with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Complications or whatever. We can't actually put him on schedule. So he said, I'll call you back tomorrow. So he called me back the next day and got us on schedule for August 1st for his first chemotherapy. We were leaving August 11th for Minnesota. So he does his first chemotherapy on August 1st.
They do some chemotherapy at the hospital. Then they say, okay, he's tolerating it. And then they send him home with chemo still, right?
Yeah. So it's actually different, it's a chemo cocktail.
Yeah. Chemo's just like a broad statement of like,
it's like pain meds. You can take ibuprofen, you can take aspirin, you can take Tylenol, you can take, Aleve, whatever.
Right. So they just say chemo as like a large, and then every different person has a different combination of things depending on what kind of cancer and whatnot.
Right. So we went in for a 3 chemo cocktail.
They make it sound so fun going in for a cocktail.
Yeah. Right. Right.
I don't care what they call it. It doesn't sound fun.
No, exactly. So he did pretty long days. His chemo treatments were pretty long. That IV drip goes in for hour and a half.
At the hospital. Yeah.
Not at the hospital, actually. It's at a clinic.
Oh, at like a cancer clinic.
Yeah. It's actually right in Vancouver Clinic. So we went down there and they did 2 different chemotherapies in an IV drip. We were there for like, I don't know, 7 hours or something. First they do a bag of fluid, just IV fluids. Maybe they didn't do the whole bag, but they did IV fluids for a while. And then they do, like a steroid. And then they do an anti-nausea med. And then they finally get to doing the chemotherapy. So we were there for hours. And then they sent him home with a pump. So his port was still accessed. And they sent him home with a pump that drips a tiny, tiny bit of chemotherapy for the next 46 hours. So he went down on Tuesday for his chemo and we were there most of the day. And then we went down on Thursday and they took his pump off. Thursday afternoon, we went down and they took his pump off. So you say your treatment's on Tuesday, but it's actually going on continuously until Thursday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long, long process.
Did that surprise you?
Yes.
It would have surprised me because I would have thought, I don't know, from watching movies or something.
I know, right?
I would have thought that you go in, they stick a port in, they clip a thing to it, they dump a bunch of meds in, it takes about an hour, and then they send you home to be sick for a week. That's what the movies make me think.
Yeah, no.
But it's not that at all.
No.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because one of my best friends died of cancer 3 years ago. And when she was getting treatment, she had the nausea, she had the weight loss, she had all the side effects of chemotherapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started researching. I'm trying to remember if I did it before she started chemo. I think she'd already had a treatment. Anyways, at some point in her cancer journey, which is what they call it, which, is kind of a weird word, but it is.
Yeah.
I was researching how to help a person with cancer. Like, what can I do for my friend?
Right.
To make this easier for her? And somewhere, I don't know if it was a forum, I don't know where I found it. I found out that rubbing someone's feet while that infusion is happening makes the side effects less severe. And so I had gone in with my friend multiple times and sat and rubbed her feet. She loved foot rubs anyway, so it was she was like, I said, can I come rub your feet while you get chemo? And she's like, yes, please. Mm-hmm. Of course, right?
Do you have any idea why that would work?
Okay, so no, but I've speculated.
What's your speculation?
My speculation is, okay, first of all, if you like foot rubs, it's very relaxing. Mm-hmm. And anything like that, if you're relaxed, is better than if you're clenched and, stressed and nervous and whatever. So relaxation, I think circulation has something to do with it because you're rubbing the feet is going to increase your circulation. Mm-hmm. So that's maybe better.
I agree with both of those for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also just human touch.
Totally.
Right? Like you're sitting there getting chemicals dumped in you, and like what can help that? Like human touch just, I think helps. Like it takes your mind off of that and like puts it to that. It's like even when you're in labor, like you can have, someone's rubbing your feet. Like you can focus on them rubbing your feet and how good that feels instead of focusing on the other thing that's like not feeling that great.
Yeah.
And so in that, it goes back to your first speculation is it brings stress down.
Yeah.
And anytime we reduce stress in our bodies, the ability to heal is better, is improved.
Yes,
so,
totally.
Because we know they always say stress is a killer. I mean, stress is literally will kill people. It'll raise blood pressure. It'll cause all sorts of things to go out of whack. Like when you're in this high stress mode and your cortisol's just pumping. So bringing that down is just going to allow healing. So it's going to just help there's so many different ways.
Right.
Probably so many that we don't even know that God's created us to just be there for one another like that.
Right.
Even just to have a friend.
That's the other thing, is a distraction.
Yeah.
It makes the time pass. You can sit and visit, chat, whatever.
And then you just don't want to feel like you're all alone in something like that either.
Exactly.
Because it's already so isolating.
Yes, exactly. And Al said, so when we went for his first infusion.
You were like, can I rub your feet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, I did this with my friend 3 years ago. And then about maybe 6 months ago-ish, 6, 8, something, more recently.
We won't fact check you. It's okay.
Yep. Another friend had to have chemotherapy, and I messaged her and I'm like, so really random. I don't know her super well, or I didn't.
Yeah.
But I messaged her and I'm like, so there's this thing with chemotherapy that like rubbing your feet is supposed to help. Would you be okay if I came and rubbed your feet? And she's like, yeah, that would be really nice.
And you don't even know her super well. I love this.
I didn't know her super well.
Well, no, you really want to get to know someone?
Sit and rub their feet for 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever, 4 hours.
Yeah.
It was so great.
Yeah.
It was so awesome. And she is such a dear. Oh, yeah. I love her to pieces. And she's doing great, by the way.
But talk about a servant's heart, Lois.
She's done with her last chemo, I believe.
And she's doing good?
Yes, she's doing really well. Hers was kind of a preventive, she was able to have surgery, her kind of cancer. She was able to have surgery and whatever. So she hopefully is healthy for the long term. That's the prayer and the hope and the expectation.
Rubbing it reminds me though of the washing of the feet, which is not really necessary these days because we're not walking around sandy ground with sandals on in the Middle East. That's why they did the washing of the feet, right? Partly. But this rubbing of the feet puts you at a lower level than the person, right? It just has like that humility aspect of like going low.
Yeah.
But then also of the serving of the other person, putting yourself to the side and doing something only solely for the other, you reap zero benefit from it. Like it's a beautiful picture.
It is a beautiful picture, but you know what? You reap so much benefit from it.
Yeah.
Of course. So much benefit.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And so I had done that a few months before Al got sick. And it was really strange because it was like, we were talking about God preparing the way, right?
Right.
But there were so many things like that, like the finances, like the planning this trip how many years ahead of time, like the recent, oh, hey, remember about rubbing feet for chemotherapy? You need to be remembering that. Like all of these things, there were so many things. And it's just so strange. And I don't know. God is amazing in providing what we need for that day. We pray, give us this day our daily bread, right? But we think of that as food. And it's not only food. It's everything. It's like, remember, you need to remember about rubbing feet for cancer because you're going to need that. Yeah. Didn't even clue. And it's really strange because I actually, when I was there chatting with her, we got to know each other very well. I went with her a couple of times and I'm like, I would love to do this. And I still might. I still might make it up, but right now I'm trying to get my life in order. But at some point, I've thought that would be a volunteer ministry that I would love to start.
Wow, would that be beautiful? And then could you share the love of Christ with them in that way?
Yes. Yes.
Like some of those people might be facing eternity shortly and may have not heard the gospel.
I know. And I was telling my friend, I would love to start a ministry, get some other like-minded women, probably, because, I mean, could be men, either, whoever, but some like-minded people together and go down to oncology and say, can we do this? Can we volunteer, make a little business cardy thing and say, give it. And so part of the reason that this whole idea of doing this as a ministry came into my head is I was sitting there rubbing my friend's feet, and there's another patient in that. So when you go in for chemotherapy, you're in a large room with chairs lined up in a row. You're not in your own private suite.
Okay.
There's 8 chairs, 10 chairs in that room. They're kind of in a single row. The one we were in is like a U-shaped or a square, might be a full square.
Okay, now paint me a picture. Are people, do most people, are they in there and they have other people with them?
A lot of them are alone. Some people have one person with them.
Are they like talking to each other at all, or is it?
No, they're scrolling their phones, or they're reading a magazine, or they're
minding their own business.
Most of them are alone. Most of them are alone, and they're sitting there with their eyes shut, or they're scrolling a phone, or, watching a show or something, reading a book.
Okay.
And there was another patient in there who was throwing up and throwing up and throwing up. And I was like, oh, I want to go rub her feet so bad. Like, not right now, because I know it's too late for now, but for next time she comes in here, I want to rub her feet from before they start the chemotherapy infusion. Would it help? I don't know if it would help, but what if it helped?
It's worth a try.
It is so worth a try. And so I don't know. I really, someday, that we'll push pause on that.
You'll know when.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would
God
love
plants
to do
seeds
that.
in us and
Right?
puts desire in us, and then he, in his time, he makes a way, as you have seen.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So Al went in for his first infusion. His brother came to visit us. His brother lives out of town, and his brother was planning to come after we got back from Waldheim. And he called Al and he's like, I don't want to wait till then. Can I just come now and spend a week with you and help you work on your projects? You got all these things you've got to get done. Can I come help you? So his brother was here for his first chemotherapy treatment, and he came with us because he's like, you're going to rub his feet for 6. It was like supposed to be a 6 or 8 hour appointment. He's like, your hands are going to be shot. Like, I'll spell you. So he came in, and Al said, I don't know why that is so good. That foot rubbing is so good. He's like, I cannot tell you why, but it is so comforting and so nice to just have that touch, that connection, the whole thing. It was so incredible. So he had his first treatment. He had his pump removed a couple of days later. Same afternoon, we met with palliative care. Palliative care is someone who has a terminal diagnosis, but they are still fighting the disease. So it's not hospice. Hospice means we are no longer fighting the disease. We are focused on comfort until death.
Okay. Yeah.
So palliative means terminal diagnosis. You are going to die, but you are still fighting the disease itself.
Okay.
You're trying to buy more time. Hospice, you're not buying time at all. You're just focused on comfort.
You're letting it take its course and trying to manage pain in the meantime.
Yep, exactly. So, and that's the reason we met with palliative care, because they are in charge of pain management. Our oncologist had been handling his pain. Immediately the day we met with her, the first televisit, she put him on a fentanyl patch. Fentanyl patch is the long acting. It's basically like a vinyl patch that goes on your skin. And it just absorbs through your skin, and you change it every 72 hours or 48 hours or whatever. It's long term.
Whatever they tell you. Yeah.
Yep. It's long term. And then we were on another med for shorter acting. Dilaudid
Mm-hmm.
was this short acting. If you have breakthrough pain, you just take that. That's more like take an aspirin sort of thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's take a short acting one. So he got on this pain management as soon as we started meeting with the oncologist. She prescribed this. And it was very helpful. But the oncologist, pain is not her wheelhouse.
Nope.
Cancer is her wheelhouse.
They're all specialized.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so she's managing his pain until we got a referral to palliative care. So
yeah, then palliative takes over the pain management until you're done
Hospice.
with treatments, and then hospice takes over pain management until the end.
The end. Yep, exactly. So we met with palliative care and set up with them. And a week and a half later, we left for Minnesota, and we had a wonderful trip. Al was in rough shape for a 61-year-old man who you would have expected him to be doing all the things that a normal 61-year-old guy can do.
Mm-hmm.
He was easily tired. He was unable to physically do a lot of the activities that we normally would have done.
I didn't have the strength. Yeah.
Yes. But he was able to go fishing and play a game and sit by the fire and roast marshmallows and tell stories. And we watched family videos one night, like old home videos. We had an amazing week.
What a great 40th.
Yeah.
I saw your family photos that you had done there
Mm-hmm.
too, and they're precious.
I know. And we knew they're the last full family
I know,
photos we're going to have.
It's
you know.
bittersweet for sure. Getting those photos done, I'm sure it's on everyone's mind, right?
Yep.
But what a great opportunity.
Yes. And the whole trip is different because you know there's a terminal diagnosis.
It's tainted a little bit with that.
Well,
or is it made sweeter?
it is made, you know, the little petty, like,
You let that stuff go.
you let that stuff go.
Like, you're not going to be crabbing about the weather. Like,
No.
you've got more important things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything was so, it's like drinking from the richest nectar.
Yeah.
It was the most precious trip, most special. Everything was more significant and more important and more
Intentional, probably.
Yes,
It was
yes.
really intentional.
Yes.
And the whole family's together.
Yes. Everybody was there.
That's not very common
Right.
occurrence in a family of your size.
Mm-hmm.
How big is with everyone there with the kids and
I
their
think there was
spouses and the grandkids?
26, maybe?
26 of you.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's 26. Yeah. It was so fabulous.
That's great. He got Waldheim.
Yep. He got Waldheim. That was his goal.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, let me back up a little bit. He had gotten his first treatment on the 1st, and we left on the 11th. On the 10th, the day before we left, he had his treatment. Basically, his pump had been removed a week before that. And I was thinking, are we going to be able to do this trip? The day before we left, I was like, are we really going to be able to do this? He was struggling. He was having difficulty eating. So he's still losing weight. His weight loss slowed down after he had gone to the doctor and gotten on some better pain management and stuff, but he was still losing weight. He was just losing a little slower than he had been. So it was pretty, like that day before, I was like, can we do this? Can we really do this? And he woke up the next morning, the day we were going to leave, and he's like, let's go. We rode with one of our kids to Waldheim. They have a van, and they offered to, because I was thinking, we had planned originally, obviously we were going to take me and Al and Cash in our car, and we were going to do a road trip. Well, we ended up having Cash ride with someone else, one of the other family members, and we rode with one of our kids as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was caring for Al. It was not something I could have done it alone. He needed enough care. So everyone's picture of we just jumped in and did a road trip, and it was great. It was brutal for him. It was hard for him, but he was determined. His sheer determination was, we are going to do this trip.
Yeah.
And so we got to Waldheim. We had a wonderful week with our family. It was so precious and so special. And we got home, and on the way into town, we stopped. The day before you do chemotherapy, you have to get a blood draw.
They check numbers and stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So he did a blood draw on the way into town, like we were still traveling, right?
Well, yeah, you're not going to drive 45 minutes back the other direction to have it done like the next day after a long road trip. So, you know.
And the next day was his treatment.
Oh, yeah.
We had to have it done that day. The day we got into town, we had
about
to have it
like cutting it close.
We cut it to the last minute, man.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
So he got his blood draw on Monday, and on Tuesday, he went in for his second chemo treatment. And when we got there, you meet with the oncologist before the treatment, just for a very brief, how you doing? And she wants to see you and see how your treatment's going along. And she said, you look like you need IV fluids. She said, you're probably dehydrated from the trip. Let's get you some fluids. It'll help you feel better. It'll help everything. So they did IV fluids, which means our second treatment was even longer than our first treatment. We were there for like at least 8 hours.
Wow.
It was long. It was very long because they did a full bag of IV fluids before they even started. And they said, that was kind of not unexpected with a road trip. You know, you don't drink as much as you should and whatever. Most people don't. But honestly, he was already having so much trouble eating and drinking that it was hard. It was hard for him.
So he finishes that he gets that treatment 8 hours and then once again goes home with a pump.
Yep.
So it's this 2-day ordeal.
Yep, he did.
Then he goes back in.
So Tuesday was when he did the infusion. Wednesday, he had a really good day. They give you anti-nausea meds and they give you steroids before they do the actual infusion of chemotherapy. And those steroids give you energy and you have a better day the next day.
I've been on steroids before, man. And like, cause I've had some weird health stuff and whenever they're just like, we don't know. Like, we're just like, how about we give her steroids? You know, we've already tried antibiotics. We've already tried whatever. Mm-hmm. They give me a steroid and I feel like, can I just be on them forever? Like I feel so, and they're like, no, they're bad for you.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I can't, but I know like steroids will knock stuff out of you like no one's business.
Yeah, exactly. So he had a really good day. Thursday, we go in to have his pump removed and he was starting to crash. When we got to the oncology center, to the infusion center, I pulled up and I dropped him at the door rather than parking in the parking lot and having him walk across the parking lot. Mm-hmm. I dropped him at the door and there's a bench there. He sat on the bench. I went and parked the car. I went and got a wheelchair and I brought it to him and he got in a wheelchair to go up to the infusion center to get his pump removed. Mm-hmm. And when we get into where the nurse takes him back, she's like, whoa, you look like you're not feeling so great today in comparison to Tuesday, you know? Mm-hmm. And she takes his vitals and immediately there are like 6 nurses hovering over him. And they're like, do you have chest pain? Do you have this? Do you have that? His blood pressure was so low and his pulse was so high that they were sending him to the emergency room. That was their call. Like, this is more than we can handle. You need to go to the emergency room. Mm-hmm. Well, his oncologist actually came in and said, get IV fluids in him. That's what he needs. He doesn't need an emergency room. You're going to send him to the emergency room. They're going to make him wait 6 hours for IV fluids. He needs them now. Get them pumping into him. So they did, I think, 1 bag, 2 bags. I can't even remember.
The details don't really matter when it comes down to it.
They gave him fluids again. and had his pump removed. And she ordered them for the next day. So that was Thursday, pump removal and IV fluids. Friday, he had IV fluids again. And they're like, watch him on the weekend. I knew what to watch for as far as his pulse and his blood pressure and whatever, you know. They're like, keep on top of this. You have to stay on top of this. So Sunday afternoon, he had been saying on Thursday morning, he's like, I am so tired. Like, I'm so tired. And I was like, well, fatigue is one of the symptoms of, or the side effects of chemotherapy. So, like, is that what it is? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Well, then when we got in there and they're like, you need fluids, and they pumped him full of fluids and whatever. So Sunday afternoon, he's like, man, am I tired? And I'm like, wait a cotton pecking minute. That's what was going on Thursday when you needed fluids really badly. So I had been checking his pulse and his blood pressure in the mornings and in the evenings. And I checked it in the afternoon, and it was not as bad as it had been, but it was trending in a bad direction. And he ended up actually going in by ambulance because he started getting lightheaded. And I was here by myself.
And even though he's lost weight, you're not going to be hauling him. He's not a small man.
No. And he was kind of losing his balance and whatever. And he sat down, and I'm like, do you think you can get to the car? He said, I don't know if I can. I said, should I call an ambulance? And he said, yeah. So he ended up going in by ambulance on Sunday. So he gets to the emergency room with the ambulance. They get him on fluids immediately. As soon as they get him in the ambulance, they start the fluids going. And they get him in to the emergency room. It's very common for cancer patients to have blood clots. And I don't know if that's inactivity. I don't know if that's dehydration. I don't know if that's the cancer. I don't know if it's the treatment for the cancer. I don't know what it is. But it's a common thing. And it's probably a combination of those things. But she says, I want a scan of his chest. I want to see if there's blood clots in his lungs. They scanned his chest, and yes, he does have blood clots in his lungs. So they're admitting him, right?
Of course he's tired because he's not getting oxygen.
Right. So they admit him. Actually, before they even admitted him, they asked him if his legs hurt. And he said, yeah. She said, I want an ultrasound of his legs. And he had blood clots in his legs as well. Like all of his legs. So they're like, you need blood thinners and you need fluids. And he ended up admitted to the hospital for a couple of days. He went in on Sunday and he came home on Tuesday.
Was it at that hospital stay that they said that he is not going to be getting any more treatment?
No. A couple days after he came home from the hospital, we met with the oncologist. She said, we need a televisit. And she said, you're too weak to do chemotherapy. You're supposed to have chemotherapy next week. But with these blood clots, with your dehydration, with your malnutrition, you're not eating enough. You're not drinking enough.
Just not strong enough to handle the treatment.
Yeah. The treatment is chemotherapy will kill you if you're not strong enough to withstand it. And she's like, we can't do that. And so Al says, so that's it then. And she said, no, I'm not saying you can't have chemotherapy ever. She's like, but you have to get healthier and stronger. You have to eat. You have to drink.
But he knew he was not able to, so he already knew. Okay, so that's it then. Yeah.
And so then a few days later, the palliative nurse wants to see him. She's like, I haven't laid eyes on him for a month since before our Waldheim trip. And she says, I want to see him. So she came to the house for a visit. Before we left the hospital, Al told me, you need to go and get a wheelchair and a walker. And I said, what about a hospital bed? And he said, yeah, a hospital bed too. So when he came home from the hospital, he was in a hospital bed. So the nurse comes to visit him, the palliative nurse, and he's in a hospital bed. And she said, how often are you out of this bed? And he said, to go to the bathroom. And she said, she did her tests, whatever she uses as her criteria. And she said, our recommendation is that we transfer you to hospice care.
Yeah.
You need more care than we can give you. She said, you can come back off of hospice if you can get strong enough to eat and drink.
But he knew it.
He knew.
He knew he wasn't. He was already fighting so hard to try to eat and drink, and he knew he was incapable.
He couldn't.
Physically. Yeah.
Yes. And so he said that. Somebody asked him, like, why can't you eat? Why don't you just eat? And he's like, they always say he just stopped eating. And I always thought, how stupid is that? Why would you stop eating? Like, just eat. But now I know.
Yeah. The body system starts shutting down and saying, nope.
Yep. There's no room.
I want to ask you about this, and I think it's just so important for people to know when you came to the point of, we want to force our loved ones to do things so that we can keep them with us longer. And there was a day that you had shared with me where you came to a turning point in that and had realized something.
Yes.
About that. And can you share that?
Yes. So I had been encouraging him to eat, and more than encouraging, like, please, honey, you have to eat.
Mm-hmm.
You have to eat. You have to drink. Like, I'll make anything. I'll cook anything, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. You're kind of trying, it's like a combination of trying to like force and bribe and cajole and beg and like all the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said, I know I need to eat, but I can't eat. So I had talked to someone else, a family member, and they explained some things to me. If you think about the fact that when you're sick and you have no appetite, like, you can't force food down. You don't want food. Mm-mm. Or some of us who have had morning sickness with pregnancy, like, I'm sorry, I can't put food in there. It just doesn't work.
It's going to just come back up.
Yep, exactly. And so it was like a light bulb went off in my head when I was talking to this family member. And I went to Al and I said, I will have food available for you at every meal. I'll say, do you want something for dinner? Do you want something for breakfast? I will have a fresh drink on your bedside table all the time. A tea and a water or whatever, like more than one. Mm-hmm. But I will not beg you to eat. I will not try to push you to eat because I know that you want to eat and you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And he just said, thank you so much.
In a nutshell, you were saying I'm going to always offer and be available, but I will not force any longer or like, cause that causes guilt and like, causes all sorts of stuff. And so it's just like, I'm going to offer, but I'm not going to have any expectation. Like you let me know, like you are in control here, like not me. And that's really a submissive kind of position to put yourself in. And once again, just submissive and humble and servant. And it changes the whole feeling, the whole atmosphere in the house when you get to that point, you know?
Exactly.
And I get how hard it is to come to that point because we're just like, just eat because we want you to stay here. We know if you don't, you can't. But we have to let go of the control of it. So offer, but don't force. I think that's vital.
Yeah.
So now he's on hospice. So they transition him from palliative. Now he's on hospice. How long was he on hospice?
1 week.
1 week.
Yeah.
And how long was he unresponsive before he?
For the most part, a couple of days. He would open his eyes. He would respond. But he was sleeping pretty much all the time for those last 3 or 4 days.
Right. But the pain was managed.
Yeah. He had a little periods of wakefulness. He did have one, like maybe 3 days before he died, he had one, I want to sit up and I want to play a game.
Wow.
And he sat up and he played a game with the kids. And after that, it was, open his eyes, smile at the grandkids when they came in to say hi, respond, hey mom, when she got there, or hi to a friend when they got there.
Right.
But it was, for the most part of 2 days, was pretty unresponsive, but he was comfortable and he was able to tell us, he was awake enough for those few days before that he was able to tell us that he was comfortable, he was pain-free. And
then he passed peacefully at home.
Yeah, with his family.
Which is special.
Yeah, as we wanted it. There's bitter in that pill, man.
Yeah.
But there is also sweet in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the bitter on steroids and it's the sweet on steroids because you have that closeness and that bonding. We had a little girl in 1995 who was stillborn, and we're kneeling at her grave. We had a little graveside service for her, and Al was hugging me, and he said, "Thank you for the most precious week of my life."
Oh.
And I knew exactly what he meant.
Right.
Because heaven is like, you can see through the veil. It's so gauzy. It's so thin. You can taste it, man.
Yeah. That's the beauty and the pain. Yeah. No, and like you said, even with Waldheim, how when things are more intentional, they're more purposeful, and the things that normally are just like irritating, just don't matter. You don't even care about that. What's important comes into focus so crisp and clear. And I think when you lay your stillborn to rest, when you watch your husband pass, when you do the stuff, eternity comes into view so clearly. Yes. And the stuff that's important here is so obvious. And it's strange how over time
you were like, how do we lose that?
Yeah, those parts heal and we learn how to navigate through the world with that piece missing, and all of a sudden we start getting irritated and whatever again, right? We start to lose that clearness. And so blessed are those who mourn.
Yes.
For they will be comforted. Yes. There's a blessing in this. And if you haven't, but is it painful? Oh man, is it painful?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's tough stuff.
Yeah, it is.
I kept thinking of this scripture in 2 Corinthians 1:3-4. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our troubles, so that we can comfort those in trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. So it brings this, when you see someone who's really sweet and compassionate, you think, what hell have they walked through?
Yeah. Yeah. To be there.
To be able to give that comfort that they themselves have received. Yeah. They have walked through the valley of the shadow of death. They have watched some stuff happen, and they have been comforted by God. And now not only are they soft and compassionate to be able to comfort you, they're comforting you with the comfort that they received themselves from God. And hopefully in that, people see God on you, they see God in you. They see, it says in their faces will shine.
Yes, Christ. And I feel like that prayer was answered. Lord, glorify your name.
Yeah.
I feel like it was answered.
And here's talking about all these, none of the stuff about the scheduler giving you a different referral or the feet massaging from your friend and then the remembrance of that. None of that stuff is coincidental, right? I really think that's the Spirit
going before,
preparing us. Before us, all of that. But here's the crazy thing. I knew we were going to be talking today, and we haven't been meeting like this now in a couple of weeks with everything that's been going on. But this scripture keeps coming to me. And then we had this, what we call the Team Hope Party. Basically, it's once a year. I try to throw this big party for all of the volunteers at our church just to come and have a meal and play a game and just let us have a moment to tell how much we appreciate each and every one of them. And we usually have someone come in and speak. So once again, we had someone come in and speak. We just told them it was a volunteer appreciation party. Didn't tell them what to speak on. Just could you, guess what his scripture was?
Oh my goodness.
This very one.
Yeah.
And when he read it, this was on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
It's Friday morning now. And I just said, are you kidding, Lord?
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, it was this moment of, like, confirmation that, like, when scriptures come to you and you're just ruminating on them and chewing on them and meditating on them, and they're just kind of jumping out at you. Like, I've read this before. Other people have read this before. But it just keeps coming up. And every time it does, I'm praying for you and your family, and that this would be true in each of the kids' lives and their spouses' lives and the grandkids' lives. And I know how the loss of Al has affected so many people. We said 26 people are at wall time. Now there's 25. And there's...
Well, and his mom.
Yeah, and his mom and his siblings. And I mean, it ripples out so far.
It ripples. It is ripples.
I mean, it's rippled to the East Coast and has affected my husband and I as well. You know, my husband's first thing that he said was, well, I guess Al's going to find out the truth before me, because they've debated so many theological issues. And then like a week goes on or so, like it was probably around the funeral, because we watched the funeral at home before we went to a wedding, which was bittersweet. So there was about 10 days from his passing to his funeral. So at first Ed says, well, I guess he's going to find out the truth before me. And then 10 days later, the funeral's happening. And he goes, I wonder if Al got up there and said, well, I guess Ed was right all along. And we laughed and laughed, and we thought if Al could see us, he would laugh as well.
If he could hear this, he would laugh. Oh, that's funny.
You know, that's kind of where we are in that. But it was just confirmation in me. Like, the Spirit speaks to each and every one of us. And he's even comforting me now and I don't feel the loss as significantly as you do. I am totally aware of that. But we still feel loss, you know, and we're there with you. And
I loved your flowers and your note on the flowers. And I want to share that with everyone.
Oh, yeah.
You said our loss, Al's gain.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it.
When we're absent from the body, we are present with the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's our hope.
Yeah.
God's people have been so good to us.
Oh, good.
We have had so much support. Everything from meals to financial help to helping hands to can we clean your house to, you know, do you need anybody picked up from the airport? Do you need places for people to stay? Just the list.
On and on. Yeah.
I
love it.
I can't even name all the things.
With that, I want to say too that although we're going to try, and Lois is kind of super woman when it comes to stuff, we're going to try to continue to release. We have some podcasts already recorded, but the editing is the part that Lois does. And with everything going on, I just ask that you extend some grace to us. I'm sure she's going to try her best to still release one every Friday. But if for some reason you see that maybe there's a Friday that nothing is released, just know that it's being worked on and we're not stopping.
Right.
Despite everything that happened.
Yep.
We're going to persevere.
We're not stopping and we're not slacking.
Nope. It's just that, sometimes life just kind of throws some stuff at us and we can only do so much. And I hope, Lois, that you don't put any undue pressure on yourself to do more than what you feel capable of at that time. Because grieving and mourning takes energy and takes time.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate our listeners so much and their grace. You know, in the middle of the craziness of the funeral, the calling hours, the whatever, I did have people say, I know this is really weird to say at this time, but I love your podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And I told them it's a little bit of normalcy in the middle of a crazy world. You know, I told you that. Stacey, you were so gracious in the beginning of this process to say, what do you want to do? Do you want to stop? Do you want to go? Do you want to pause? Do you want to slow down?
Yeah.
You're running this boat right at the moment, you know?
Yeah.
And I so appreciate that. But I didn't want to stop recording.
Yeah.
And I still don't, because it's a little tiny bit of normalcy of my life. We've been doing this for a long time. And my Friday morning is coffee and Stacey, and I don't want that to change, you know?
Yeah.
And even when Al was sick, you know, there were a few Fridays we had to miss. And thankfully we had enough content up ahead.
Because we're both great planners.
I know, right? Plan ahead.
We know those unexpected expecteds are going to happen.
Right.
Like, it's just
exactly.
life. It's the way it is.
Yeah.
I didn't expect
Certainly,
this. To be honest,
I was just gonna say the same thing.
I did not expect this.
No.
This came up kind of out of nowhere for me and went fast.
Yeah.
And it's jarring and shocking.
Yeah. 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 That's what I was going to say. I expected like family trips and like,
sure.
you know,
yeah.
Somebody's having a grandbaby, got to go, you know, whatever.
Exactly. We're very optimistic. We expected only good things to get.
Well, you know, not even, I guess, I mean, even, I don't know. This came out of left field.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's good to recount all of it. With every recounting of the story and every tear that shed, it brings one more little bit of healing.
It does.
That's how it goes.
It's really interesting to me that tears are salty because you use salt water for healing and those tears run down your face and they drip off your chin and they land on your heart. And I feel like those salty tears running down your face, down your chest, like heal your heart. I know it's, you know, sort of dorky, but that's what I picture.
Not really. It's really not. It's kind of like a great picture. I heard that the tears that you cry when you're happy are different biological makeup than the tears you cry when you're sad.
Yeah.
Like tears of mourning are different than tears of joy. They have, if you put them under a microscope, they look different.
Yeah.
I just asked my doctor the other day why it is that every time I cry, I get a headache.
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, most people
Sometimes
don't.
I do. Sometimes I do. Not always.
Yeah. I don't get a headache from happy tears.
Yeah.
I get a headache from sad tears.
Yeah.
And my doctor, she's a natural doctor. She was just like, it was kind of funny because I was paying and scheduling my next appointment with the lady at the front desk, and she had kind of walked back there and was doing whatever she was doing. I said, "Hey, by the way," because we had just had a conversation and I had started crying in the lobby of my doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hey, by the way, I've wondered why in the world I get headaches every time I cry." And she just pipes up, "Oh, it's your liver." Like, and I was like,
what?
"Yeah, makes sense. Totally checks out." Like I've had some issues with my liver.
Yeah.
I've had to do different cleanses and whatever. And so I'm probably due for another.
Yeah.
So partly probably my doing from some years of not living the right way. And then, you know, partly, who knows, Chinese medicine says you store anger there or something, I think. And that checks out too. All of the repressed emotions and all that, you know, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is I get headaches when I cry from being sad. It's almost like my liver can't handle it or something.
Yeah. Strange.
I don't know.
Our bodies are so incredible.
Yeah, they really are.
That was a really interesting thing in this whole process of losing Al is our bodies fight to live, but there are some things that kick our butts.
Mm-hmm.
And cancer is one of them.
Yeah.
Man, it was brutal. It was brutal. You know, his passing was peaceful and those things, but the effects on his body, the weight loss, it aged him so much, so much. You know, it was really incredible. I got to tell you one other little story. Al's dad was on the Gravel Point Cemetery board. Gravel Point is where Kelly is buried. And Al's older sister is buried there. They had a little girl who only lived 2 days before Al, their firstborn.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. My husband's parents' firstborn daughter only lived 2 days. She was really early, and that was in 1960. You know, her lungs were not developed enough, and she lived a couple of days. And she's buried in Gravel Point Cemetery. So when we had Kelly in 1995, they asked us, you can bury 2 children on one gravesite.
Okay.
One space, because their coffins are small, obviously. And so they asked us if we wanted to bury if we wanted to bury Kelly with her Auntie Catherine. And so we did. And Al's dad is now buried there, and Al's buried in a different area of the cemetery because Chuck and Sharon and Catherine and Kelly are on that. But Al's dad was on the cemetery board. And then when he decided to give it up 25 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever, few years after we had Kelly, he gave it up and Al started doing it. I don't know what year it was, honestly. It could have been only 15 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, Al's been on the cemetery board and he has the map of the cemetery. So when the funeral home has a funeral, they call Al and say, we need so-and-so's grave laid out. Go lay out John Smith's grave. And so he goes down there and lays it out for the diggers. And when they need to place a headstone, they call and say, we have John Smith's headstone. Where does it go? He goes down and puts nails in the ground or whatever, ribbon, and they place the headstone. And so when Al passed, I called hospice and they called the funeral home. And the guy calls me. His name is Jim. He calls me and he says, I recognize this address. Have I been out there before? And I said, yeah, you picked up Al's father 2 years ago. He was on hospice in our shop apartment and you and your partner came and picked him up. And I said, this time we're not in the shop. We're up in the house. So come on around behind the shop. We're in the house. And he says, this paper says Al Matson. This is not the Al Matson that takes care of Gravel Point Cemetery.
Yes, the very same.
That's what I said. I said, yeah, Jim, it is. And he's like, I just talked to him like not even 3 months ago about a headstone. And I said, I know. He's like, what happened? And I said, 2 months and 5 days ago, he went to the doctor with abdominal pain. And it was pancreatic cancer. And you're coming to pick him up tonight.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's so fast.
So fast and so crazy. I was trying to explain to somebody, like, what does this, like, ride feel like? Like a roller coaster, like a merry-go-round, like all the, like, what is this? Freight train speed.
What'd you come up with?
I was trying to explain. I'll tell you. You know those old.
I'm going to like get to the point.
Yeah. You know those old-fashioned toys? A wooden top.
Okay.
With the little color. There's like a red stripe and a blue stripe and a yellow stripe.
I had one.
And you wind a string around the top and then you pull that string and that thing just sails across the floor like a.
Yeah.
It's just skating across the floor, spinning.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Or that's what it felt like those 2 months and 5 days. And I'm like, did the top stop on September 13th when he died? Or are we still skating across the floor because we're still in the aftermath of, I don't know. I still haven't figured it out. It feels like it definitely changed then, you know?
It's like when the top stops, then you know how like it skates and then it stops and it still like rolls around on itself, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of does that for a while.
It's still moving. It's not quite stopped. And I don't feel like, will it ever stop? I mean, maybe when I die, it'll stop. Because that's going to happen too, you know? Sooner or later, don't know.
I was just talking to someone about this, about how it's kind of funny that we don't talk about death very often. Actually, I feel like I talk about death a lot. But like most people don't talk about death very often, and it's the one universal thing that will happen to everyone.
Yep. But you know what? People don't like to talk about it because it's uncomfortable.
We don't want to face it.
No, we don't want to look at it. And when a loved one dies, you're looking at right in the eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe still not, because it's not me looking death in the eyes, but I'm watching someone I love look death in the eyes.
Yeah, you're feeling the effects of it.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know. I like the imagery of the walking through the valley of the shadows.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? We have no cause to fear. Our God is carrying us through this valley of the shadow.
Yeah, it says he walks through.
Yeah.
You're going through.
Yes. And he's carrying us through.
Yeah, and you didn't camp.
I know that I cannot walk through this valley by myself.
Right.
but he is so faithful, and he has been so faithful, and he has called God's people to pray for us and to support us in so many ways. I can't even name to you all the ways that people have been helpful.
Well, and just as much as Al's passing has caused a ripple effect through so many people, the ripple effect, it goes out, right? Then it like kind of almost comes back.
Yes.
Like as much as it goes out is as much as it comes back, right? Like if the ripple effect is very small and the person hasn't affected very many lives, it doesn't affect that many people in their passing. And then they also don't get a lot. The family doesn't get a lot back, right? So it just goes to show that the testament of, Al's life and how many people he affected. That's what that shows, I think.
Yeah. And I do believe that God has been glorified in this process. I really do. I think those prayers have been answered. The prayers of the saints are being answered in that we're being carried. And I just want to assure you, and I want to assure everyone who's listening, we're okay.
Yeah.
We really are. We're going to be okay. And I told Al that a few days before he passed. I said, honey, we're going to be okay. And the reason we're going to be okay is that you and I have prepared our kids for this moment. We have prepared each other for this moment. We know it's going to happen someday. We just thought it was going to be when we were 85.
Right. Yep.
But we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that.
That makes a passing so much more peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that's so much of the struggle with people sometimes is they're so fearful about leaving people like that. They're afraid that the people they love aren't ready.
Be okay.
That they're not going to be all right. And so they just try to hang on for dear life.
Yeah.
But we trust in a God who is on the throne and
absolutely
who knows the beginning from the end and
has
us in his hand. And we're all going to be okay. And we're going to cry. And we're going to laugh and we're going to cry some more and it's going to be okay.
Yep. That's it. Exactly.
So that's it. Exactly.
But, I am very thankful for 40 years with my husband.
Yeah.
One night early on in the process, he was not feeling well. His pain was more difficult in the early stages than it was in the later stages because it wasn't managed as well. And it takes a while to get that all worked out. And one night he said, if I die in my sleep tonight, I've left a legacy.
Yep.
Yeah. And I want to can I read you a song?
Yeah, please do.
I want to play it, but it's copyrighted and all that.
Right.
So I'm going to read you the lyrics and we'll go from there. Al had one request for his funeral.
The Waylon song? Was it Waylon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, here's how I picture it. You guys walk into a silent church and you sit down and Waylon Jennings sings, Just Watch Your Mama and Me. And I want to read those lyrics for you. And this is Al's heart. This is his heart. Well, I started this with, we had 40 good years. We had 40 years together. And this is his heart of those 40 years. You are my children, my gifts to the world. You are the lights of my life. You all have your good hearts. You have your own strength. So I know you'll all do all right. As I look to the future from this day and time, the truth is I don't have a clue. There are modern day wonders I don't understand. So I'll leave that all up to you. But if you want to learn how to dance, just watch. Just watch your mama and me. Just a good old boy and his lady. Nothing too fancy to see. If you want to be happy, just watch your mama and me. There are so many changes changing too fast, things I know nothing about. Some things remain, just stay the same. And that's where I might help you out. But if you want to learn how to dance, just watch your mama and me. Just a good old boy and his lady. Nothing too fancy to see. If you want to be happy, just watch your mama and me.
Oh, bawling over here.
I know. That was what he wanted.
Yeah. It sounds right.
I know, right? Well, and we did. We had it at his
Yeah.
funeral. And you know,
I heard it.
I felt like it was, his funeral was so him. I felt like we honored him and showed who he was.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for listening, Stacey. It was really good to talk about this. And
Yeah, it was
I
so good.
went into it with trepidation saying, oh boy, can I share this? And there's a lot that I didn't share. There's a lot that's too personal to put on a podcast and share with the world.
Yeah.
But the overview of the journey was really good to share. And I appreciate it.
Until next time. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you.
We'll talk next time.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
I want people to have tissues before they start.
Good plan, because we did.
Warning.
Tissue warning.
There's little bits. I've cried probably
You have
multiple
trigger
times.
warnings. We have tissue warnings.